prompted by a conversation that I had with the seller, that we obviously took them through a few individual steps to really bring them to the conclusion that holding on to their property, regardless of them really not having a mortgage on it and not really needing to sell, is probably a bad use of the funds. So going through a little bit of a process of elimination in a conversation that I had just a few days ago prompted this podcast. Hopefully it helps. Welcome to Rethink Real Estate. My name is Ben Brady, and this is a real estate podcast aimed to deliver sales strategies, marketing tips, and business insights from industry experts and myself to build a listing-focused business for the future. Let's get into it. Conversation that I had with one of our local agents in Southern California and a client of theirs probably only a couple of days ago. It just gave me a little bit of a trigger that I wanted to make sure that I did a really short podcast episode with just a clear-cut point that I just kept making with the sellers. In my last practical session, we sort of obviously had a conversation about the price doesn't obviously fix absolutely everything. But at the end of the day, I think that's it's understanding from a seller's perspective about holding onto the property for as long as it is. Now, again, I know that I've mentioned this a few times in the episodes that we've done in the past, but I really do believe in the philosophy that's happening at the moment of the fact that a lot of people are taking their home off the marketplace when they're not getting the result that they want and thinking that interest rates dropping is going to be something that is going to solve the market. I really don't believe that to be the case because inventory levels are at their highest they've been since COVID and actually exceeded what they were pre-COVID in many of the marketplaces that I'm referring to. Now, that might not be the case in your marketplace, but even if the average days on marketplace have creeped up, you just need to be cognizant of a few different things. Is that if the interest rates were to drop 1% tomorrow, the thing that would happen, yes, there would be a flood more buyers that come to marketplace at certain price points, not at every price point. Okay. But what you would see is an influx of inventory at the same time that I do believe would dampen the volume of buyers that are coming to market. Because I believe that one in every two properties on the market, I believe 50% of all properties in many markets. Now, this is not backed up by any statistic whatsoever. This is honestly just based off the data that I get to touch, feel, and listen to every single day with the volume of properties that we have all over North America. I would go as far as to say 50% of all properties at the moment are not getting the price they want and choosing to remove it off the marketplace and wait for better market conditions. Because I do have a thesis behind all of that is that I believe that the market is staying, the prices are staying where they are at the moment, and a lot of sellers are not meeting the marketplace because they have refinanced at a particular time. They may be underwater from what they purchased it, but they refinance at a particular time where they can afford to keep their mortgage because they're keeping their jobs. Not many people are losing their jobs. I don't believe that there's any type of recession on the horizon, only in the real estate marketplace from a volume of transactions. But I do believe that it's important to understand that people can afford to stay there or people can afford to continue to pay the mortgage if they don't get what they want. So at the end of the day, we need to make sure that you're exploring that prior to taking that listing on, or make sure that you identify that really quickly. But the conversation that was had with the seller that we were talking to, their properties in Huntington Beach in California, and it was just a really clear-cut conversation. Is that we gave them the feedback from the 2 weekends of open houses. They'd had over 25 groups of people through. The one catalyst when providing feedback to sellers is to give them an understanding of that. Hey, the people that are coming through the door, they definitely have the budget to pay more or the price that you want. I think that's a really important thing to state to people. Understanding and finding out what a buyer's budget or asking the agent what their client's budget is a really important step in all of this when you're providing feedback to a seller, because you don't want to tell somebody, hey, I know you want $500,000. Okay, but a buyer only wants to pay $460,000, or what's their budget? It's, $460,000. No wonder they want to pay that because their budget is only to that amount of money. So the thing that we really focused on, so the seller can't deny the marketplace, is that we are getting a lot of people through the front door that have the budget to purchase it at the price that you would accept. The only downside is that they are seeing other properties that might be a better opportunity at that price point, or they don't believe that your property is worth that number at the moment. It's not prompting them to make offers. Now, for those that it is prompting to make offers, or those that are interested, they're only interested between that $460,000 to $470,000 range. Now, keep in mind, this seller is said to us pretty clearly that they want over $500,000 for the property in the very beginning. We looked at all other properties that are on the marketplace at that point in time, and we showed them what their competition was around that price point. It's a studio in Huntington Beach. But it was just a really simple conversation that once we had taken them through the 25 groups of people through, 80% of those people have a budget to exceed $500,000. But if they were going to pay that amount of money, they would go and buy a one bedroom, not a studio apartment. Yes, yours is nicer, but it does not mean that it gives somebody the security in order to actually want to execute on it, because it is still a studio apartment. And they obviously didn't like hearing the information. So at the end of it, the comment was made to them is that, hey, I think that the one thing that we're always going to battle with this property is that this will be an issue regardless of a good, bad, or indifferent market. You might be able to get a little bit more if there's less inventory on the market, but I think that it's going to be a lot longer period of time than what you think, that the marketplace is not going to get you the number that you want. Now, that might be fine. You guys might be able to hold on to the property. You might be able to let it have income for a period of time. But the reality of it is that a decision that you're making not to sell now, I believe, is a decision for a couple of years. I believe the marketplace and the inventory levels are going to be at a pretty high level, and we're going to cycle through that over the next 18 months to 2 years. So the thing that you need to ask yourself, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, is your money better kept in this property to maybe make a little bit of a gain if the marketplace is better within a couple of years? Or is it better to be taken out and wait for a better opportunity that if the market does come down a little bit further, that you might be able to take advantage of that or put it into another state that actually is suffering far more than what Southern California is now? And that's the thing that you've got to get sellers thinking about, folks. That is the line. It's not about the decision that you're making is longer than now. It's more so, is your money better kept in this property? Because owning real estate is expensive. I don't care where you are. Property taxes, wear and tear, okay, the utilities, all of that stuff is very expensive. And that is money just down the drain that isn't technically going to the principal of the loan, if ultimately they have a mortgage on it. So it's a conversation of, is your money better spent here or kept here? Will it perform as well? Or is it better taken out of this property, maybe taking a little bit less than what you thought it was worth, and then putting it into another area, another state, and letting it perform because you're buying it on a little bit more of a down curve than where you're selling it from at the moment? Because it could just be a different price point. This is a studio apartment, so maybe it's better, taking the money out, waiting for the one bedrooms to come down and maybe buying a one bedroom and upgrading for maybe the same price from an investment perspective, because a one bedroom is always going to do better than a studio. Maybe it's a 2 or 3 bedroom, okay, that ultimately, you need to, that's only a certain square footage, and maybe you can get a bigger property for that. Again, you've got to understand that if your property is coming down, so are others, but not every individual area is the same. Because if you said to me you were going to pick up $470,000 out of California, you're going to go put it into a property maybe in Colorado, maybe also in Texas, maybe in a few different places, Florida, Tennessee, all of those markets that are really, really suffering from an average days on market perspective, maybe you can get more cash flow in, say, an Alabama or a Kansas City, or something along those lines. So, folks, we've got to understand, and we've got to talk about the bigger opportunity at hand. Is your money better kept in this property, or is it better taken out and placed in another avenue? Or is it better just to go into the S&P 500 and just accrue? Because again, if you took that money out and you at the beginning of the year and you put it into the S&P 500, you're up about 10% at the moment. Again, yes, you've got to ride the wild wave, but the reality is that that's definitely performed better than the real estate marketplace as well. All of these options need to be taken into consideration. All of these options need to be pointed out to your client, and I'm going to continue to go down this path, is that not only is your money better kept in this property, or is it better taken out and put elsewhere? Is this problem a specific property problem, or is this market driven? Most of the time, I think you'll find that it's property driven a lot of the time, and that issue is still going to exist, and there's still going to be more inventory, and you're going to have a very low inventory market for that issue not to be isolated. But then the decision that you are making is far greater than now. I think the decision you're making that if you're not going to accept $460,000 to $470,000, I believe that is a decision that you're going to hold on to the property for at least 2 years. So again, you might own the property or cash, you might have a mortgage on it. We've got to calculate what the expense is going to be that you won't get a return on, because I don't believe that in 2 years' time that it's going to jump immediately another 50%. It may only go up 5 or 6, 2%. And that is really not worth the gain, because the money that you have in the property at the moment is just going to sit stagnant and it's probably not going to grow at all. So that's the other thing that needs to take into consideration. Money that sits stagnant at a particular value and ultimately costs you money, that it is a liability, taking it out and not having the liability and just sitting it in a cash position. Again, we can all argue inflation and whatever it is, but the reality is that property taxes and the maintenance and the utilities and all of those different things, maybe you can rent the property, but then we've got to take into consideration the wear and tear, the management fees, the stress that it puts on you in order, if the fridge goes out, the washer dryer goes out, the air conditioning goes out, the whatever happens. Again, all of these things need to be taken into consideration. There's no doubt about it, but it's making sure that we point them out in a very comprehensive, a very consultative approach when we provide that feedback. Making sure we're pointing out the people that are coming through. They have the money, but ultimately they don't see the value there. And again, making sure that we point out the trend of the market. Guys, it's all good and well to say it might be worth, $500,000, but the reality is that we've had 25 groups of people through and we can only get somebody to see up to $470,000 worth of value, and they haven't even put that on paper yet. Don't let them buy into the delusion that no more time isn't going to fix this problem. Like I just said, is that I think the decision now, the marketplace is probably at its best, we'll see for a while, because as interest rates come down, more and more inventory will come to marketplaces in many, many of the areas. I know that is a scary thing to think about in many of the areas, but take all of that into consideration. Thanks, team. So about 75% of our audience hasn't liked, followed, or subscribed to our podcast. It would mean the world to us, and it would help this podcast more than you know to expand our reach if you were to like, follow, or subscribe on any of the platforms that you're watching or listening on. Thanks again.